If you're running a Next.js app in production right now, your Stripe keys, your GitHub tokens, your OpenAI API keys, your database credentials, there's a real chance they've already been stolen and you wouldn't know. Cisco Talos just published their investigation into a massive credential harvesting campaign targeting React server components. The vulnerability is called React2Shell. It has a CVSS score of 10 that's the maximum possible severity rating. It requires no authentication, no user interaction, just a vulnerable Next.js server exposed to the internet. A thread group designated UATTCO has been systematically exploiting this flaw across the internet. 766 confirmed hosts compromised, over 10,000 files exfiltrated. And they weren't after your source code. They were after your end-to-end files, your secrets, the keys to everything your application connects to. The attackers built a custom command and control platform called NEXUS Listener, complete with analytics dashboards to track stolen credentials. They're treating API key theft like a business. Let me show you exactly how this works. React server components were supposed to be the future of React. The idea is simple. Some components render on the server instead of the client, which means faster page loads and less JavaScript shipped to the browser. Next.js adopted this architecture aggressively starting with version 13, and it became the default in version 15. The problem is in how React server components handle serialized data between the server and client. CP 2025-55182 is a pre-authentication remote code execution vulnerability in the server component rendering pipeline. When a React server component processes certain crafted input, the deserialization logic can be tricked into executing arbitrary code on the server. No login required, no session needed. If your Next.js app has a single page that uses React server components, which is most of them by default, an attacker can send a specially crafted request and get code execution on your server with whatever permissions your Node.js process runs under. The vulnerability affects React 19.x and Next.js versions 15.x and 16.x. That's not some obscure library. That's the most popular React framework on the planet. Vercel reports over 800,000 active Next.js deployments. The attack surface here is enormous. Patches were released in December 2025, but the disclosure was initially quiet. There was no splashy advisory, no front page news. A lot of teams didn't patch, and the attackers noticed. UAT 10-608 didn't discover this vulnerability. Chinese state-nexus groups did. Cisco Talos identified that Earthlemia and Jackpot Panda, both linked to China's intelligence apparatus, were among the first to exploit React2Shell back in December 2025, likely within days of the vulnerability's initial appearance. But UAT70 took it industrial. Starting January 2026, they built automated scanning infrastructure using Shodan and Census to identify every publicly accessible Next.js application on the internet. They fingerprinted which ones were running vulnerable versions. Then they deployed exploits at scale. Here's how the attack chain works in practice. The attacker sends a crafted HTTP request to a Next.js endpoint that renders a server component. The payload triggers the deserialization vulnerability and executes a small bootstrap script. This script does three things. First, it maps the file system. It looks for N files, configuration directories, and credential stores. In a typical Next.js deployment, your .n file sits in the project root and contains every secret your application needs: database URLs, API keys, authentication tokens, webhook secrets. Second, it exfiltrates everything. The stolen files are sent to the NEXUS Listener command and control server over HTTPS, making the traffic look like normal web requests. The data is encrypted in transit, so network monitoring tools don't flag it. Third, it installs persistence. A small backdoor is dropped that allows the attackers to return later, even if the original vulnerability is patched. Unless you specifically look for it, you'd never notice. 766 confirmed hosts were compromised this way. The real number is almost certainly higher. Those are just the ones Cisco Talos could confirm through their investigation. The NEXUS Listener platform, the attackers C2, has an analytics dashboard. Cisco Talos got a look at it. They categorize stolen credentials by type and value. The haul includes Stripe API keys, both test and live. If you had live Stripe keys in your AUN, the attackers can process charges, issue refunds, access customer payment data,